So, okay. All right, it's on. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Libraries for Research Data interest group. So it's nice to have you here. We are just going to do some quick introductions of, I guess, to start a little bit of a history about Libraries for Research Data, but also just to introduce some of our newest members. So we have Jennifer and Tim. I don't know if Tim, they're on, if Jennifer can introduce herself, but also Tim will be speaking later. But we have them, and also we have I think Susanna is joining us too as well. So so we onboarded new members, and then also Birgit and I will be stepping down from the libraries group. So we have those changes, and we're lucky to have actually Irina, who's online, Irina Kuchma, who will be facilitating the session for us on UNESCO open science recommendations. So I'll let her introduce herself later, and all the speakers too. So our speakers are over there, Cecile and Susanna. And again, looking out for Tim. It's very early in California, so hopefully Tim will be online soon. But yeah, Birgit, if you wanted to take over here and just say
something.
Tim is
online already. Thanks a lot, Tim, for not going to bed.
So can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks from my side as well for coming out today. Just a few words about our history. So the Libraries for Research Data started with the Birds of a Feather session many years ago in Washington, second plenary. And since then we had meetings at every plenary basically, and now of course moved from narrow to broader topics. And now, I mean, today it's broad in the sense of open science. But we also had, as you have heard in the welcoming presentations on the first day, we had outputs which were quite popular, the 23 things. So I'm glad that we had some impact with our work, but of course it's more a group which brings together recent developments. So if you have anything in your libraries which you would like to share, go ahead and get in touch with the co-chairs. And yeah, Chris and I, as we said, are glad to hand over to a fresh new group, and yeah, hopefully enjoy today's session. And of course, if you want to contribute to the discussion, we will ask you later, and please feel free to come closer.
And I also forgot, so, you know, we're also online, so our other members are there too. So Suni is online, and also I hope so Naresh is here as well, but we have an online contingent as well. So thanks to them, also our additional group members, co-chairs. So yeah, I think without further ado, we can hand over to Irina, if you're ready.
Thanks a lot, Chris and Birgit, and it's wonderful to see everyone virtually, and I'm really glad that many of you are there in person, because that's different. And thanks a lot for your interest in this topic. I think it's really exciting that we now have this first international open science instrument, and UNESCO recommendation on open science has been extremely helpful in IFL's work. I manage IFL Open Access Program, and we work with National Library Consortia in over 40 countries in Africa, Asia, and Europe. And when our governments adopted the recommendation, then we felt that that's a good opportunity to build on them. And what we immediately did, in collaboration with OASPA, we released a recommendation and checklist how open access publishers could implement UNESCO recommendation. And then when we started having advocacy meetings with university vice chancellors, we felt like we need some kind of guidance for them as well, because UNESCO recommendation is an excellent document, but it's not a short document. And we thought that maybe we could provide a gateway to decision-making people in universities. And these two documents are part of UNESCO Open Science Toolkit, and I'll drop links to them in the chat and also add to our collaborative notes document. And for those of you who are not online but in the room, collaborative notes document is linked from this session agenda on the RDA website. So for the discussion, I suggest that we start with 3 presentations. Each speaker will speak for 10 minutes, and then we'll have about 5 minutes for immediate questions after each presentation. And for the order of speakers, I suggest that we start with Cecile Swiatek-Kasafiers, who is a LIBER board member, and she'll talk about bringing together expertise and dynamic action, building on the recommendation and feeding back to the UNESCO. Then we'll have a look at UNESCO recommendation on open science from the university perspective, and Suzanne Yakiri will speak about that from Tampere University. And then thanks again, team is joining us from UCLA Library Data Science Center, and Tim Dennis will speak about lessons for librarians in open science principles and methods. And we also promised you one more talk from Ukraine, from Oksana Bruy, who is a librarian at National Technical University, Kyiv Polytechnical Institute. Unfortunately, she can't be here today because some conflict in her schedule that requires her immediate attention. But the reason we single out that university was that for me it was the first example where values and principles from the UNESCO recommendation were actually included in the institutional open science policy. And it really looked beautiful in the policy document, and we picked up on that approach, and we also included them together with some areas of action from the recommendation in Botswana national policy draft that we're working on now. So that's another use of recommendation where you can actually borrow some of the wordings and refer to it because governments already agreed to that. After these presentations, we'll have a discussion, and discussion will be based on your questions and thoughts, and also some questions among the panelists for the panelists. So please, for those of you who are in the room, you'll raise your hand, and Birgit and Chris will help to moderate the questions. For online participants, please type them in the chat, or also raise your hand and speak up when there is a moment to speak. I guess that's all for housekeeping. Thanks a lot, and over to you, Cecile.
So hi, colleagues. Happy to be here with you today. First time in RDA, and did to talk a little about UNESCO. So first of all, where do I come from? Because some known faces in the audience, some people maybe that do not know much about LIBER, the Ligue des Bibliothèques Européennes de Recherche, Association of European Research Libraries. It's the main network for research libraries in Europe, founded 1971. Now it gathers over 400 national university, other libraries from 40 countries plus. So together we work to represent the interests of European research libraries, but also their universities and their researchers in several key areas. And we lobby policymakers on issues such as copyright and open access, so usual business. We collaborate with our member libraries on European funded projects and through events like next July 5 to 7 in Budapest, there is our annual conference. Maybe I see you there. I work in a university that is called Paris-Nanterre. So that's in France. It's an RDA member, and it's located near Paris and near a business district called La Défense. So over 34,000 students, over 1,000 researchers and professors in all disciplines of social and human sciences, sports sciences, physical education, but also mathematics, computer science, and engineering. So in a nutshell, Paris-Nanterre is mainly identified in France as a major university in SSH with a strong social dimension. So before we start addressing, that was not the good button, today's topic, maybe we can take some elements to raise awareness in our own librarians or library capacity and active role with open science, starting with skills. So today I will say libraries, librarians, library staff, whatever. It's an inclusive terminology. So this open science skills has been developed by Liber. You will find it in the UNESCO documents. They are getting now published on the toolkit. You have the link that has been circulated in the Zoom chat. So this is a visualization made by and for librarians. It's CC BY. You can download it on Greek, French, English. If you want to translate it, just contact me on Zenodo and on the libereurope.org website. We developed it through a long list of skills by reviewing literature, exploring available learning resources in open science. And we went through the existing competency frameworks, key frameworks, such as FOSTER+, DIGCOMP 2.0, and different roadmaps. So what I want to say is that this made by librarian. Yesterday, I looked at the score, and it had almost 9,000 views and over 3,500 downloads. So it means that we have a strong community, we network a lot, but we give deliverables that are used and reused by others. So that was one point of awareness. Another point of awareness is that we are everywhere. We are networking people. We have this social dimension. Look at today, online, in presence, during many meetups. I can see librarians everywhere. So my big wonder is that if we do this, and if we think we do it for the better good, then we should showcase ourselves maybe a little more, because it's very frustrating when you have open science development or research data development. You can always say, I have been doing this for 10 years. How come I am not cited, or my library is not around the table, or the librarian is not in the engine? But this is the thing today. We are going to talk about our role for supporting or implementing the UNESCO recommendation. First, let's be very aware of our capacity. This might look ridiculous. You prefer Aristoteles to pop culture, whatever. At some point, we need to stop being that shy and say that we are players and stakeholders, clear and loud, because people like us, we bring a different vision. We have different strategic views. We bring different elements. We are very helpful people with this. So now that we can say that we are going to do our citizen duty, maybe, I would like to stretch a bit with you. These are the components that UNESCO identified as open science components. We can disagree, whatever, but I want to prove today that we are already active in the field. To us, it's evidence, maybe. It's obvious, I don't know. So please raise your hand if you are, and online also I can see you, if you are interested or already active in open access. Like, come on, don't tell me that librarians are not already active. So if you raise your hand, it means you have a word to say, so please invite yourself at the discussion table. Same thing for open infrastructures. Of course, we are here today. We could go like this around those components, and I'm pretty sure that there is none that will be without any raised hand. So this is why you can find librarians, though this is an awful slide, I know. This is why you can find librarians as partners for UNESCO from the beginning. Irina, who is here, myself for Liber, IFLA also for Open Educational Resources recommendation. We have been active for creating the first frameworks, writing letters, answering questionnaires, and we were sitting on the expert bench for drafting and then writing the final UNESCO recommendation. Once we know that, we just have to think that this is our object and we can use it, play with this, and disseminate it further. For the UNESCO recommendation, maybe you saw that the toolkit that is being delivered, because this will go on for a few months from now, takes its element from the work of working groups. Those working groups are open to everyone. I saw some of you hopping in and out from the meetings. You can see them again, access the documents. So feel free just to register and open the door and enter the room just for discussion, and maybe say the word library. No one will be very astonished about this. There is one working group I wanted to highlight today. It's the monitoring framework. This is where we are working, we librarians are working on providing sources for content and methods and criteria for assessing the initiatives taken or about to be taken for disseminating the open science recommendation. What will happen? Within a year or two, all member states will receive a questionnaire. The same has been done last December for OER recommendation 2019. So that will come soon for our open science recommendation, and the questions were very clear. You have 7 key areas, action areas. You have principles, you have values in the recommendation. What did you do? And what are you planning to do? And you provide URLs. Well, when you raised hands, it means that you already did something. So maybe you keep it for the record. And when within a year, member states, but networks and stakeholders will be asked to provide feedback and feed forward UNESCO, but you will have it ready. So what's coming next? That's written, but sometimes it's not easy to find. But you might be interested in being part of drafting or finalizing the indices, an index on open science capacity building. The questionnaire is still open. If you want to have the exact link, you can come to me or to any colleague and you will find them. If you want to be part of a guide like engaging society in open science, you say, obviously I know something and I can bring an element, please come and participate, and that will be yours even more strongly. Checklists. We had an example given by Irina about the checklists for publications, and fact sheets also. So that will run till December, most probably. So here we could do the same. Now, if you look at the open science recommendation, but we won't raise hands because you don't like it, I know. But if you look at each of the 7 key areas of actions, surely you already have something already implemented with RDM, with open access, with whatever training programs, whatever it is. You are here everywhere. So just note it down, maybe for the record. And something that will probably be less identified by some bodies, but clearly by librarians, I think, are the values and principles. And when time will come to assess and get feedback within the monitoring framework, they will ask, what did you do, member states, institutions, services, to spread those values? What did you do to support and enhance those principles? Well, please just note what you're doing, because this is very precious for UNESCO to have your feedback, and for you, this is quite interesting, I think, as a guidance for your action. So this is awful, but you can get back to it if you don't want to go into the whole UNESCO website or the text to see what is behind values and behind the principles. So what's next for libraries? I would just say, make your pick. You have so many things already done or so easy to follow and then to showcase. Please put yourself under the spotlight. This is a bit weird for librarians, but never mind, let's do this, because people are waiting for us and we are so frustrated when the others take the place, when we do the job and others speak for us. Maybe this can be interesting in your services or for your own brainstorming with your institution or network to have a look at the strategies. There are built strategies where open science is at the heart of the strategies sometimes, or is a key element among others. So this is the Liber Europe strategy with one specific focus on advancing open science. AEFL, Irina knows that I'm projecting this, has also open science in its strategy. Maybe you feel more comfortable citing this strategy. And IFLA, of course, in one of the key initiatives, even if it's worded a little differently, is completely integrated into this field as a consultative member for UNESCO anyway. So that's it. I won't take longer. I think we can have time for exchange, questions, coffee, whatever, now or later. I'm here for you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Cecile, and it was excellent. I think it's a very good approach when you can have a look at the UNESCO recommendation and then almost do like a checklist what your organization is already doing in this area, or if there is an area where your organization is not involved yet, what is that you can do and what would your priorities be. So for us in IFL, it was a very useful exercise, and also in Liber and other organizations. Thanks a lot. So any questions to Cecile? And we'll need help in the room. I don't see any online questions. I guess no one is raising questions in the room. Then maybe we can move to our second speaker and then have a discussion. Everyone. Susanna, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And it was very nice listening to Cecilia and nice opportunity to talk after your good background also to my perspectives. So I come from Tampere University. It's the second largest university in Finland. We have 7 faculties which are related to technology, society, and health. We have 4,000 staff members and around 30,000 students. And our university is one of the most multidisciplinary university in Finland. We are at a new university, kind of newborn university, and our history as new university starts from 2019, when Tampere University of Technology and the old Tampere University were merged. And about me, my background, I have a background as an information science researcher and teacher, but has been working in libraries now a little bit more than 10 years, if I count it right. And nowadays I work as a chief specialist at the university level, but located in the library, which also tells something about what kind of big role library has in open science in universities. And to my task belongs chairing at Tampere University our open science working group, preparing our university to national open science monitoring, acting as a publishing manager of our Diamond Open Access Tampere University Press, participating actively in our national open science work, which means, for instance, chairing our national DMP consortium steering group, co-chairing our national open science enterprise architecture work, and being part of different open science related steering and working groups. In my presentation, I'm reflecting some aspects of open science, both from the national and Tampere University point of view. Sometimes they cannot be separated, since our Finnish style is to work very closely together at the national level, or often they cannot be separated, I would say. I will also take up some challenges we are facing at the national and research performing organization level. On UNESCO recommendation on open science, I think how it defines and sees open science is something that has inspired and challenged also our thinking in Finland and in Tampere University in many contexts. Although we do truly a lot of cooperation within open science in Finland and also internationally, and think about the common good, we are not used to state its value so explicitly, I think. I also like how UNESCO Open Science recommendation takes up societal aspect through the recommendation and emphasizes the needed dialogue. In Finland and in Tampere University, we have been very active in policy making and also at operationalizing the policies. The National Open Science and Research Coordination promotes open science and research, as well as discussion on its opportunities, challenges, and their solutions in Finland. The coordination model is based on collaboration between the steering group, expert panels, and working groups. And the whole is supported by Secretariat at the National Coordination for Open Science and Research in Finland, OSCAR, which operates in the Federation of Finnish Learned Societies, with funding from the Ministry of Education and Culture. The expert panels and working groups are open to all interested to participate in, but of course you are expected to be committed to our Finnish National Open Science Declaration. We have this National Declaration of Open Science and several rather detailed policies and recommendations already. And within this Research Data Alliance context, I would like to take up especially relevant ones in this context. This policy component 1, open access to research data. It was published already nearly 2 years ago. And the planned release date for the policy component 2 on open access to research methods, which includes also open code software infrastructures, is on June this summer. There is not going to be any substantial changes to this draft, which is already available as Google Docs. So if you like to take a look at it, you are free to do so. I think UNESCO Open Science recommendation is also in line and even strengthens many international initiatives and agreements. And just to name some, since Finland is bilingual country, we have Swedish and Finnish as official languages, this Helsinki initiative on multilingualism in scholarly communication is important to us. And then naturally there is this Quora and the agreement on reforming research assessment. And all Finnish universities have signed it. The UNESCO Open Science Recommendation also considers very well the 3 core duties of our university: research, teaching, and community relations. And from the Finnish and also Tampere University perspective, I think that following this UNESCO Open Science Recommendation strengthens especially open scholarship. And there is clear need for that, since great challenges facing not only Finnish society, but societies globally. UNESCO Open Science Recommendation is also promoting responsible research and researcher evaluation. And within Quora context, we are moving fast also in Tampere University. It is the guiding tool that has put some speed on our development and also increased dialogue within the university. Naturally, there has already been this DORA, which also our university has signed. There has been Leiden Manifesto, Metric Tide, and so on. But now Quora is truly expecting us to do something very concretely and in a certain time frame. So we are now at first time in a hurry, I think, with these matters, and that is very good. We wrote our first, for the new university, our first guideline already 2018, and it is going to be updated this summer, so we are working hard on that right now. And in comparison to the previous one, there is now going to be more emphasis on societal impact, co-creation, research integrity, sustainable development, and economic sustainability. And also the writing process has happened in broader cooperation and dialogue than before. And naturally, library as an actor has a very central role. Then I would like to tell you about how we are working now on national reference architecture on open science and research in Finland. I am co-chairing this working group together with the chair of Finnish Union of University Professors, Jukka Heikkilä, and as a main architect we have from CSC, Ari Rouvari. And the architecture work bases on our National Open Science Declaration, policies and recommendations, which we in the working group have enriched, especially by UNESCO Open Science Recommendation and Quora Agreement on Responsible Evaluation. Also other documents we have been reading very carefully from this point of view, naturally. And this Oscar Enterprise Architecture co-project last 2 years started last year, and it includes members from Finnish open science and research steering organizations, higher education institutions, and research institutions. And the deliverables of the project are the enterprise architecture definition, communication materials, and executive summary. When analyzing, we were actually not asked to analyze where we are going, just to illustrate what is needed in order to make real all these policies we have. But naturally, we also need to evaluate them, I think, what's the state of art of these concrete services, capabilities, and processes we have illustrated, both at the local, national, and international level, which we consider as that we need. And when analyzing this, we are using traffic lights, and unfortunately, there is not much on green. The reason is that our policies are both broad and deep and very ambitious. And when concretizing and considering the reality, we also need to be both broad scanners and deep divers. We see also need for even broader co-creation. And when we get a little bit further with our work, this project could be seen as pilot project to launch a discussion on the need for a common and shared reference architecture framework on open science and research more internationally. UNESCO Open Science recommendation takes up also monitoring. That's very important. In Finland, monitoring of research organizations is already a fairly established tool to advance developments in open science. The start of a systemic promotion of open science in Finnish science policy can be pinpointed to 2014, when the Ministry of Education and Culture initiated an open science and research initiative and published the Open Science and Research Roadmap. In addition to defining objectives and actions, the roadmap stated that the achievement of set objectives will be monitored. Between 2015 and 2019, the Finnish research performing and research funding organizations were evaluated nearly on a yearly basis. And the purpose of these evaluations was to highlight best practices and ideas of development. And also this kind of atlas of open science and research in Finland was published in 2019. It's also freely available on the net, you can Google it. The 2019 evaluation was the last one conducted on behalf of the Ministry of Education and Culture, as in 2018 the ministry transferred the coordination of open science to the research community. We had the latest monitoring last year, and the next one is going to take place next year. So universities are being monitored on a regular basis on regard to their guiding documents, services, and on some quantitative indicators from several aspects of open science. And they have not been so active in developing their own monitoring models more closely in relation to their own strategic aims, which I find as a pity. Tampere University was evaluated to represent the highest level in all the monitored open science aspects. But when I think what I am struggling in my everyday work, I think that neither Tampere University or any university can be evaluated as excellent, especially if we take a deeper look at the policies which our guiding documents and services and so on are assumed to reflect. There is still so much to do. Now finally and briefly on some challenges and barriers. So funding and monitoring models, they are essential in promoting or in creating obstacles. At this development stage, we should take a proper look, especially on whether these models acknowledge the needed co-creation and encourage to develop services as well as indicators for the variety of research outputs and activities, and truly acknowledges the cooperation needed. There are still silos at the service level and formulation. Research data services is a very good start. We very commonly have them in Finland, but they are not enough. But there is also hope and concrete actions, of course, ongoing. For instance, within this Cora context, we are now working in more cooperative form, also at the local, national and university level. Within Research Data Alliance context, we have heard in several occasions about the lack of proper professionalization for these data stewards and so on. And we are working with that both at the national and local level. I also would like to take up that at the national level, more dialogue and cooperation is needed in the context of open science legal issues. And it is promised to be strengthened within our national open science coordination already this year. Universities, IT services, and other service providers also in our university in Finland do not commonly favor non-commercial tools, nor in software development open co-creation. but researchers are more active in doing so. But I think that is something that we should also promote in libraries and in universities, that within support services, we would also favor this type of activities and development. And we also should consider in our university, and I think also at the national level and context more carefully, our business models. And there is actually a national group starting this spring, which is focusing on this matter and how to fund this open science movement better. And as a final conclusion, I would like to just suggest that we should, in all the levels, have more transparency, how in decision making all these ethical and societal aspects, as well as co-creation as a method, have been considered. And this UNESCO open science recommendation could be a good basis to do that kind of reflection. So thank you. Looking forward to further discussions and your experiences.
Thanks a lot, Susanna. That was excellent. I would only echo that co-creation is really important, and this emphasis on non-commercial community collaborative services in the UNESCO recommendation is very strong. And I think what's really unique with the UNESCO recommendation that they also included indigenous knowledge holders and knowledge from communities. And for us, for working in Asia and Africa, it's an important point. And I think it's the first time, well, at least I haven't seen anything else before, where in the open science policy document, you also have strong societal engagement and voices from traditional knowledge holders. So thanks a lot for emphasizing that. Any questions to Susanna in the room? I don't see anything online yet.
We have microphone.
Do we have a microphone? All right, I'm going mobile.
Are there any questions? Sorry, I can't see the room.
Precious.
Thank you.
Hi, Susanna. Many thanks for your talk. My name is Paloma Marin. I work at ORCID, and it caught my attention the part you mentioned about different services that libraries can offer, and also the consortium model that you're applying for DMPs. I assume this is part of DMP Tuli, and I would like to know more about your experience in Finland with DMPs and maybe suggestions you might have for other countries and libraries. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important, but also very tricky question, I must say. Our DMP, this national work, was before centrally funded by the Ministry of Education and Culture, but only 1 year at a time. And we got the new funding, or that we got to know that, okay, now we are running again also this year, usually at January. So that made our long-term planning and development very, very difficult and unsecure. So in that sense, it was good that now, when it's in the hands of research performing organizations to build up the consortium around it, we can do much more long-term planning and development. But at the same time, there is still this paradox that now we have members who are paying for this consortium. So we have 33 research performing organizations in Finland who are part of this consortium, but there could be double easily. So some of our members are asking that, what's the extra they get of being part of this consortium and paying for it, when we still want to provide so much openly for everybody. So that is a tricky, I think, format, this consortium, because if you think, for instance, the spirit of UNESCO open science recommendation and this common good, so there should be not that much that kind of extra that only those who are paying for are getting. So I think we are now building up this new kind of thinking and realizing that I think that it's also about perhaps branding that okay, our university is giving to everybody. So I think we all should think that way, because when we are giving, there are some others who are in other context, those who are givers, and we are those who receive something which we perhaps do not provide that much ourselves to the common, for the common good and shared table. But we have now, like we are developing these machine actionable DMBs within the consortium, very active on that, and Tampere University is the piloting university in many technical aspects. We are now planning to put in action. And then we also may have several groups who are focusing on specific matters like these technical questions. So other also technical questions. Then we are having a group for additional guidance for handling sensitive data. So we make initiatives and we are very active, also recognizing these national needs and working together within this consortium and providing openly to everybody. But yes, I would like to have seen this still centrally funded by the ministry, but so that we could rely that we are having this year after year. So that's my personal wish, how I think it would be best solve this model.
I also, can I have the microphone? Yeah, I also have a question. So can you comment a little bit on how perhaps the monitoring has evolved over years? So what changes have you seen since 2015 or something, which is a long period?
Yes, it was very, I think, or it is still, I must say, very time consuming to provide those answers. So naturally the coverage is more broader now. There is also this open education, for instance, now included, all the aspects, central aspects of open science. But before it was more targeted on our upper management so that they should provide or give information how they see certain things. And also they were asked about the policy and services and what's good. It was already from the beginning and still is in the current model also, that if we state that we provide service for something, if it's hidden, if the evaluator cannot find it through our website, so it's considered that we don't have that kind of policy, that kind of guiding document. We don't have that kind of services. So that also, I think the model has made it easier for me, at least, to tell at the university that, hey, please don't put this on our intranet, put it on our public websites so that everybody can read it, everybody can use it also. So in many ways, it has made things, I think, better and promoted the development work. But now what we are struggling, I think that, well, it was already in 22 model and now there's active planning for how to enrich this 24 model. So now there are more planning, or we in open dialogue, or of course also nationally. So what kind of quantitative indicators there should be? And the problem is that they are not so mature. Where to get reliable data? What is comparable? For instance, what does the number of open data sets tell? Can we judge that, for instance, Helsinki University is better if it has more hits than Tampere University? And are we also, I think there is these very big questions that what we are like actually evaluating and promoting. So although I come, for instance, from the data intensive university, so there are also research questions which do not need data and opening data. So what if we only, or if we put too much emphasis on that kind of indicators? So there is this reliability, and also to what are we guiding universities, to which direction, what's the actual point? And I would like us to find ways how to, for instance, within this research data context, how to monitor good data management, and whether the data is then opened or not, or that's also not, as you know, black and white question. So what is open data? There might be embargoes or some restrictions, who and for which purposes it can be used, for instance. But I think if we can monitor and promote good research data management, the open data sets, they will come. They are as a result of this good data management, but as an indicator, they may tell us a wrong story, I think. So that kind of struggling we are now having. But I still think that now that we have very precisely, there is as these guiding documents, these policies, and what we have in them. So that's good. That promotes open science also within universities, I think. Also very important is that we put quite a lot of emphasis and focus on services which we are providing. Because how can we expect our university to manage well, and our researchers, that how they can do their best if we don't have the actual needed services in place? So it's good that also our services are evaluated, and I think at this development stage it's much more important than to observe those research outcomes.
Thank you so much. It was very useful. Thank you. And I would like to invite Tim, and thanks a lot, Tim, for joining at a time which is far from convenient for you. Like, I can't even think what time is it for you now.
It's 3:54 here in LA, Los Angeles.
Sorry.
So this is when I get up from my morning jog, you know. I'm teasing. No, I'm not.
That's better than a joke. Over to you.
So, and I'll just say, somebody can forward the slides for me when I say next slide, please, but not yet. Go back one, sorry. So yeah, I'm Tim Dennis. I'm at the University of California, Los Angeles. I'm the director of the UCLA Library Data Science Center. I'm a data librarian by trade. I'm also involved with the Carpentries as an instructor. I'm on the curriculum advisory committee, or the chair of that, for the library carpentry, which we hope a lot of our work will be fed into. This slide deck is more about a project report, and it's written from a US perspective, so forgive me for some biases that might pop up in there. But yeah, next slide, please. So following the UNESCO recommendations that were released, and in conjunction with parallel activities in the US, including the National Academy of Science, Engineering, Medicine, which formed a roundtable on aligning incentives for open science in 2019, and they published a toolkit. And then in conjunction, NASA declared in the US the 2023, the year of open science, the use, and they've done a lot of activity on developing curriculum and guides for NASA, and which is publicly available. So triggered by a lot of those activities, we applied for and received a grant that will fund a curriculum on open science. And that'll be next slide, sorry. So we found like all these activities were happening, but at least in the US, from the US perspective, it's really good to hear about the other activity that from presenters on this call. There was not a lot of open science oriented training for librarians, and in fact, the open science in libraries and kind of in the U.S., or at least from my knowledge, that remain kind of fragmented, and awareness about open science practices and these activities remain relatively low. And we've also thought that the open science is inefficiently addressed in formal library school curriculum, and an integrated, targeted, reusable curriculum, an open curriculum, doesn't really exist. While recent efforts in library training programs have often focused on research data management, data science, and even looked at the intersection of scholarly communication and information literacy, a holistic approach to open science training is needed to respond to national and international calls. Next slide, please. To address that gap, we applied for an IMLS grant, which is Institute for Museum and Library Services, a federal funder in the US. And we received an award to incentivize the development of open science curricula. We believe firmly that librarians and information professionals are essential educators and collaborators within the research lifecycle, and they will be critical to ensuring the practice of open science is promoted and supported. This project, which is ongoing right now, will develop, implement, and refine a reusable curriculum to ensure library and information professionals have the skills and the knowledge to participate in open science engaged research life cycle. Next slide, please. So this will happen over a couple of years. We're currently in year one, and then we'll take 7 winning proposals in year one, help further develop them, and then 7 in the subsequent years. This will give us a chance to kind of fill out a curriculum framework over a couple of years. Next slide, please. So we took in proposals, that are roughly 2 pages, and they included, the topic. We asked for a learner profile because in libraries, librarians have a lot of different roles. We can see aspects of library, professionals' activities being touched, within the sub-librarian function, so metadata librarians might be doing something different than the public service one. So we want to be able to address that and have a learner profile that is part of the proposal that we'll gear to. And then we'll basically a short kind of brief description of the lesson and what's going to be covered. The next slide, please. We did provide some possible topics. Oh, by the way, Chris Erdman, who's in the room there, really helped a lot with this project. He helped kind of conceptualize it and help write some of our proposal. And we came up with a list of these topics that wasn't required for lesson proposals, but is kind of suggested. And it's kind of, we have like proposals in, so it's kind of, they nailed a number of these topics. So we're hopeful that this will help form kind of a curricula that we can fill out. Next slide, please. So we received 32, the call was released late last year, we received 32 proposals by February, and they were from 20 librarian-led teams or other data specialists in academic institutions or archives or research centers. Most proposals came from the US, but a few came from Australia. And we're very pleased that we've had that meeting. Next slide, please. And then so on the implementation side, goes to next slide. Sorry. We have a review committee in place. You can find that names on our website, which I have a QR code at the end. And they're experts in open science, or they're librarians that are prominent in this space, or we have a few researchers. Chris Erdman again is on this review committee. We have another person from the Library Carpentry Advisory Group is on this committee, and so and person from NASA TOPS. So we hope it's a well-rounded committee that will be able to select these lessons. As I mentioned before, 7 lessons will be selected the first year, which we're currently in, and then 7 in 2024. Each winning proposal will get $5,000 award to fully develop the lesson. Next slide, please. We want these to be ultimately in the carpentries, and specifically library carpentry. So we're going to adopt the carpentry style and the kind of research-based pedagogy for developing the lessons. This includes the templates that are provided in the carpentries, and also just there's a lesson on developing lessons in the carpentries, which is very meta, but we'll walk the learners through that. I mean, the authors through that development. Next slide. And this is a little bit on that. There'll be 2 virtual summer seminars where we do lead the lesson author winners through developing the lesson. That collaborative lesson development training is the lesson on how to develop carpentry style lessons in a pedagogically sound way. And we'll provide support for that. We have money for a student who, a technical student will help the lesson authors develop these lessons, because they'll ultimately will be in GitHub, and there'll be open educational resources that will be incubated in the carpentries. The carpentry has a method for incubating lessons through like a life cycle that will then become stable in the library carpentry curriculum. And I think that's it for me. Next slide, please. That QR code, I should have put the link. I can provide a link, but that will resolve to the website that we built for this project. And I think if you have any questions, I can answer, but that's it for me.
It's a lot, team. That was excellent and very interesting. I was wondering, how do you plan to ensure consistency of terminology, wording in the lessons? Or do you think it will be covered by adopting this common carpentries approach and following clear guidelines on how to develop a lesson? Because the reason I'm asking, we've just created an open science handbook, which is a textbook, and it was also collaboratively written, and we really struggled to edit in the end, or in a way that it doesn't look like a selection of different chapters written by different people, but there is some kind of consistency. Or I don't know, maybe it's not your goal.
No, that's part of the kind of the curriculum advisory group role, is there's a kind of meta editor role in that. The carpentries does have like a glossary they develop collaboratively, a glossario in multiple languages. Each part of each lessons also has like a glossary that we can help, standardize. but that's a good point. We haven't really fully fleshed that part out. But that is part of this collaborative lesson development process where we kind of normalize terminology. And that's a really good point. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Any questions to team? I don't see anything online, maybe in the room. Are there any questions?
I don't see any.
Yes.
Oh, there. Thanks.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Eileen Manchester, and I'm on the LC Labs team. My question was one about the difference between like an open science curriculum and like a research data management curriculum. I'm imagining they're very similar, but maybe also different, because you mentioned some of that as a gap in the beginning of the presentation. So just curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, there is overlap. And in fact, there's a few lessons in the carpentries that episodically talk about open science, but they're talking about research data practices. So yeah, I think this approach is to try to develop a curricular framework that is more holistic about open science, that, you know, people who are wishing to teach from it can teach parts of it, or teach the whole thing. So I do see there's big overlap, and that's like in the carpentries, because there's so many lessons across multiple lesson programs, having some redundancy is okay. But yeah, I think there is going to be that overlap in topic area that we're going to have to wrestle through. Did that answer? And what is the LC Labs, by the way?
Library of Congress.
Ah, cool. All right. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Hi, it's Agatha from University of Oslo. I was wondering, do you envision this curriculum to be implemented also in, I don't know, higher education for librarians? These carpentries curricula, yes, there's one dedicated for libraries, but I feel like a lot of librarians don't even know that they exist, right? These carpentries lessons for librarians. So if you create this curriculum for open science for librarians, how will you ensure that it will like really target all these librarians that need to know about open science?
It's a constant kind of, I think, challenge for the library carpentry group, at least. And there's certain library schools that are using the curriculum in their, you know, in the US at least, I think maybe in some European schools as well, but it's not systematic. As you can tell, the approaches, we have no top down here in the US. We're herding cats in a lot of ways. So yeah, we hope this will be open enough it can be integrated in, and we do try to promote that as much as we can through our advocacy role. But it is not systemic. You know, there's no push button approach that we can do. So it's basically, we'll do a lot of outreach and we'll try to promote the use of it in as widely as possible. I mean, I teach this at UCLA's high school, and it does inform the curriculum there, and we're trying to formalize that, but that, you know, so like it didn't fully work out to teach some of our program through to get graded, but it does inform the curriculum because, you know, you have to convince faculty to use it.
Excellent. Then maybe we can move on to our discussion questions. So we have 20 minutes left, and we identified a couple of questions that we would like to ask the panelists, but also everyone in the room and online. And then also feel free to reflect on anything that was discussed. So hasn't been discussed, but related to UNESCO recommendation, or share your thoughts. So the question that we identified to kick off the discussion, the first one is, what do you think are the low-hanging fruits for libraries who would like to implement UNESCO recommendation on open science? Where would you suggest starting? And then the next question, which is related, which parts of the recommendation are more difficult to implement, and what makes them so difficult? And is there something that we can work together to support that implementation? We mentioned the toolkit, for example, or UNESCO working groups. Maybe we can engage there and work together on something, and then who would like to work together if we identify those topics. So that's an outline, but we can also touch upon other questions. And I also encourage people in the audience to respond to those questions. So maybe let's start with the panelists and with the first question. What do you think are the low-hanging fruits? And if you would be given advice to librarians and libraries who are interested in implementing UNESCO recommendation, where should they start?
Maybe I can start answering this.
Thank
Just
you.
common sense. It's like start where you're good, what you are good at. Don't start with something you don't know and you would like to know, because this is another objective, but maybe you plan training or you plan building an action on what you already master, so you can appear as a leader on this, as an expert on this, and you can engage your own professional community and researcher communities, other communities with you, to have a collaborative action. And my general advice is coming from the Liber skills working group when we were drafting this wheel, was create your own path. If you start with what you master, then see what is next to it. For example, you start with publication because you are over mastering the diamond model financial things. That's great. Then you have to choose, are you going towards citizen science or to data management? And then you choose your path. Don't try to do everything at once. And maybe when you start considering one area that you master, or one value, one principle, whatever, read the text, but make your pick. Then maybe the community that will be here with you, engage with you, will take the lead on the next step. This is how we work collaboratively, but it's just a simple advice, like start easy.
Thanks a lot. Susanna, team, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I have very similar thoughts as Cecilia, and I would like to remind on the motto and African adverb that Hilary Hano took up on our first plenary day, so that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So this, I would also like to emphasize very strongly this co-creation and cooperation. And although the questions, they can be very tricky, I think within open science, perhaps there are no easy questions actually, but solving them together and doing this co-creation, at least that's something that is very inspiring and fun, and in that sense very easy lowing fruit is just to start cooperating, I think, and finding the relevant context on the basis of what are your concrete aims, what you are struggling with, whether citizen science, diamond, open access format, or something related to research data. There are all these nice, I think networks like within Liber and Research Data Alliance.
But at the same time, I think I should contradict myself and say that's too easy. because this is too easy for a librarian to go for publication. So maybe I should look at the political agenda. What's on my university board political agenda? In France, we have a national plan for open science. What's in it? I should do like what you did for my own university. And what do we want to put on the political agenda? Because we can think that something is coming, for example, on policy making or on funding criterias. So that's another way of doing things, completely contradictory with the first one, but this is not the first time to look at the different parts. We start what we are good at, but at the same time, if we want to tackle something else, maybe we take the political question that has the main challenges for open science, advancing open science. And maybe that's the funding criteria.
Yes.
If we look at the UNESCO recommendation, but I hope you have different points of view and you will be expressing them. I saw different hands that were raising in the audience also, like 2 or 3 people.
Maybe we can hear from the audience and then team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hanna Lindros, and I'm from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. I work in a library, but I'm not a librarian. I am a scientist by training, and I work with open data and open data management. And I'm going to stick my head out and ask, do librarians really need to be involved in all aspects of open sciences? For example, open labs. Do librarians really need to know everything about that? Or should we rather team up with the people who has these skills already? For example, data stewards. Any thoughts on that?
Maybe Tim gets that question.
I'm sorry, you throw it to me. Yeah, it's a good perspective. I mean, there's like my unit, I have, technical staff that are not librarians and librarians as well. And so we do engage with these different actors on campus and stakeholders. So yeah, I think it's a good question, but I like the model where libraries, train even as data stewards on like best practices and RDM. So though I do think there's a really important role for liaising librarians to know these concepts when they work with faculty and researchers. And it is a gap, like on a big campus like UCLA, I see that gap, because we are just spread way too thin and we need help and I think there's interest in librarianship to be able to upskill and try to have so you're going to be participating with researchers collaboratively on the research anyway, but you'd want to do it effectively so you are actually engaged in modern practices. So that's my pitch. I don't know if that answered the question, but I think it is imperative we do learn the concepts and some of the practices around open science to be more effective, and also not assume that researchers wouldn't, researchers, I come into my lab all the time and don't know any of this stuff. So we're also that educational component in helping improve practices on our campuses or where we might work is important.
I just wanted I don't know if I introduced myself before, but I'm Chris Erdman from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So I'm a librarian at a funder, and we've talked about funders a bit, but we do have that teamwork environment where we're at Michael J. Fox Foundation. But I've been engaging with a lot of our researchers, and they don't have a map of their campus, right? Like they don't have a map of who do they turn to. And that question keeps coming up. And I think your question about teamwork and having something like that, that researchers know where they can turn to for various things is something, it just comes up often. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that the skills that I have as a librarian are critical at the funder. They don't have these skills in-house. And I'm almost thinking, like, wouldn't it be a good idea if we paired funders with librarians? Because there's only two of us, actually. Ashley Farley is the other one at the Gates Foundation. I don't think I've experienced another librarian at a funder, but you know, two of us have those backgrounds, and they become really critical, I think, in the funders. And there is a group called the Open Research Funders Group, at least in the US. And actually, that would be a great session. Maybe if we could make these connections, it would be great. But sorry, Irina, if you wanted to.
No, thanks a lot. That was excellent. And I think we should emphasize that we're not speaking about libraries doing things alone. We're really talking about collaborations, and obviously collaborations on campus or institutional collaborations are essential. And then, of course, national and also professional, regional collaborations, just to make sure that you didn't get us wrong. We're not advocating for libraries doing something alone in this complicated landscape. Any other thoughts, comments from the room or from
Yeah, we have a question from Amy. She's maybe.
Please.
Hi, my name is Amy Nernberger. I'm at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Libraries, and I really wanted to return to something that Cecilia brought up. I actually think that your 2 points are not in opposition to each other. They are a yes and at different levels of the library, where on the boots on the ground level of libraries, we start where we are with the skills that we have while collaborating at higher administrative levels of the library with talking about what's on the political agenda. How can we advance this? How do we make these arguments at higher levels within our administrations, with our institutions, to see what those are about? One of the things that I wanted to return, though, was to this idea of starting with where our skills are, what we know as librarians, what we're trained in, especially when we're working with liaison librarians. I think there's a lot of stress that our liaison and reference librarians that I hear about you want me to add one more what to what I'm already doing? Are you serious? So helping those librarians bring these concepts, as you said, into their conversations as they already exist, really helping them increase the visibility for the skills, for the knowledge, for the experience that they already have in what we've been trained on as information professionals. One of the programs that we've engaged in this space is we called it Digging into Data, where we've asked and worked with our reference librarians to focus in an area of the discipline that they already serve, looking at the research data that's active. What are people actually doing with the data? Not asking them to become research data managers or even understand research data management, but to understand what their discipline is doing with data in that area, and then how they can bring their own perspectives as trained librarians, as information professionals, to these conversations, recognizing, honoring the skills that we have as information professionals to address issues of bias, of access, of how we bring information literacy into these conversations around these other aspects of open science. So not even adding on to, but simply creating a greater sense of appreciation, a greater volume and amplitude about what libraries are already skilled at, and applying it to the variety of everything that is open science, and recognizing that's so much more than the publication. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other raised hands in the room?
Yeah. LC Labs again.
Yeah, I have a question. So I work at the Library of Congress, and it's a national library. And I was wondering if you all have experience or thoughts on how national libraries either are or could be part of kind of open science conversation. Because it seems to me like, and maybe I'm off base, but like there's a really sophisticated sort of set of structures in university libraries. And I'm wondering what the relationship is to like, or a national archive, a national museum, those kinds of cultural heritage organizations.
Are you connected with the Year of Open Science and those people, the agencies and the?
There are, so my team is an innovation team, so there are like communities of practice for government innovation, but so that's like the best touch point, but it doesn't connect necessarily to like our collections. So it's, I think, tenuous at best at this point.
Let's work on it.
Maybe I can start. We collaborated with the National Library of Armenia on setting up a national repository for the content that the National Library has, but also serving as a capacity building center for universities who would like to work with repositories offering expertise on software. Specifically, we were looking at DSpace 7, which is new and quite different software from previous version of DSpace. So that National Library is hosting content nationally, also national collection of theses and dissertations, and also acts as a training center for the rest of the country. So just our tiny example, and I don't know, perhaps other panelists could share if they have any experiences.
Oh, yes, and in Finland, I think that our national library, well, it is active, but could be even more in providing or sharing their expertise, for instance, in documentation and in metadata questions. It is stated to be our national metadata expertise centrum also, and they are or have created and are keeping it up to date also our ontology services, vocabulary services, which are multilingual and semantically interoperable, and all these aspects are very, very important, and so that we have that kind of understanding of the needed harmonization and of the accepted shared metadata tools when we are planning different kind of integrations and documentation and so on. So they are very relevant ones, and I think national libraries are especially in a very crucial role in providing that expertise.
Yes, I agree that this expert support is really important, but we have to consider how a national library is conceived and under what umbrella it is positioned. In France, for example, the National Library has its staff from higher education and research, but the National Library is from Ministry of Culture. So here is the question: if you have an open science policy at the national level, and it's driven by higher education and research ministry, which is our case, it's more for expertise and support. If it's an institutional decision, an open science policy, National Library could have its own, but my institution will manage with its partners its own strategy. So I think the standardization and the metadata and the multilingualism things are really the three main key objects where national libraries can work together in their own network to provide this expertise, because no one else will. I don't know if in different regions of the world, the national libraries act differently, because I suppose that national and academic libraries can be mixed together also and have a completely different point of view.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. And unfortunately, we are at a time when we have to wrap up. I think that was a very, very interesting discussion. So maybe a couple of final words from the panelists and organizers. And apologies that we didn't touch upon hard issues. I flagged some of them in shared notes, like open peer review and sharing negative results, because these are topics hard enough for even innovative open access publishers. And then if you want libraries to be advocating for that, that's really challenging. So maybe these are some of the areas that we could look together in the near future, and how we could help each other learn more and be better advocates on those topics. Then maybe Tim next. What are your like final thoughts, reflections?
I wanted to say something, which is I think we said it's not just about open access, but it is, for at least from the funder perspective that I'm at right now, which is we can't do some of the other things that we want to do, around some of the data sharing and software if we don't have, like some of these open papers. So it really starts with preprints. And, one of the things I've had to do is chase around manuscripts of authors and make those available. So it really, that's critical for some of the stuff that we're doing around data sharing and software. And it starts there really. But we're lucky, we've had about 80% of our publications are open. So yeah, that's one thought too.
So
yes, let's not this subject escape out of our hands. I think that's the thing. We are so highly already engaged into this. We need to appear on on the screen, like for real.
Yeah, let's not let it the conversation die, but we're at lunch. That so
Bon appetit.
yeah,
Bon
thanks
appetit.
Arena and Tim very early in the morning, and to our panelists Susanna and Cecile. Yeah, thanks, and our co-chairs that are online too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
thanks a lot, and have a great day. Nice evening, Mediterranean. Bye.